Hi, geographers. Let's talk some more about cultural processes and the effects of globalization on local cultures. So, modern culture and knowledge about aspects of popular culture or modern culture, you can use either of those two words, they spread these days because of all of those communication pathways that make communication really instantaneous, and even being able to see images and hear voices and all that kind of stuff. You know, just on YouTube is an example about how knowledge about popular culture really spreads all across the world. So there's a process that we're going to talk about in cultural geography called re-territorialization. There's a big mouthful when you say that word out loud, but I have it on the board behind me. And this is another one of those times, like when I was telling you about globalization, don't just look this up on Google and find whatever source pops up first and take it for granted that it applies to a cultural geography point of view, because it might not. It probably won't, because this word, re-territorialization, is also a vocabulary word, a key buzz concept word in political science and politics and urban planning and things like that. So we have a deterritorialization, re-territorialization. Those are some major words and some major debating points in political science right now. So please do not just take any old search return on Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever you use as pertaining to the way we use this word in this class. We have a very specific definition, and it's kind of a bottom-up definition, just like I was telling you about glocal is kind of like a bottom-up definition. So there are some differences to this, however. I want you to be careful to look at the similarities, yes, but pay more attention to the differences so that you can identify them between globalization and re-territorialization. So with re-territorialization, some kind of aspect of modern culture or popular culture is appropriated, so to speak, not necessarily appropriated for the money-making standpoint, like we typically use appropriation, that word, to refer to some kind of economic component of taking in a cultural aspect. But re-territorialization really focuses on making an aspect of popular culture, that one aspect of popular culture, making that into a component of local culture by taking it, repurposing it to a certain extent, or jigging it, so to speak, so that it fits local flavors, local customs, local traditions. So for instance, one of the go-to examples that we use in cultural geography for re-territorialization is the hip-hop movement. Now listen to me when I say movement. Hip-hop is not just a music genre. Music is one of the components of the hip-hop social movement, but hip-hop originated as really a social justice and social education platform, so that people who felt voiceless or who were rendered voiceless by the dominant powers in society could have an outlet, a creative outlet, to voice their concerns, voice their desperation in certain cases, in most cases, but also voice the need for a class consciousness and the necessity to bind together for social uplift. So, hip-hop originated in the Bronx in New York. There was also a hearth on the West Coast in LA, and I'm not going to get into the debate about that right now, but hip-hop is a movement that enabled people to have a creative outlet to make political statements. And because hip-hop was that kind of all-encompassing thing, it incorporated art with graffiti, it incorporated speaking truth to power, it incorporated creative expression through dance and through rhyme. There's all kinds of different components of hip-hop that is very appealing to people universally. And so hip-hop, maybe with its origins in the United States, doesn't necessarily retain the original flavor of the music and the rhyming that started in the United States. However, it does translate well into local cultures. It retains its original form to a certain extent, and through reterritorialization, there are many hearths of hip hop that have emerged around the world. Indonesia is a central hearth of hip hop now that has, if you listen to that music, you will hear some of the same beats. You will hear some of the same rhyming patterns, but you will usually have the social justice issues and the call for unity done in the particular on the particular terms of the local culture. So hip hop has diffused to lots of different places in the world. However, that diffusion does not keep it in its pure original form. It stays unique, and it doesn't affect all aspects of local culture, like the globalization process could potentially affect many different aspects of local culture, the globalization process could. Reterritorialization instead keeps the entity intact, modifies it for the local flavor, for the local language, the local customs, the local beliefs, and makes it their own, in turn makes it a part of local culture moving forward. And because it becomes a part of local culture that they have ownership of, rather than just borrowing it or having it influence and erase parts of local culture like globalization can do if local cultures don't intentionally resist it. Reterritorialization modifies a good thing that the local culture says is a good thing, that fits into their overall mental scape or cultural landscape, and makes it their own. So reterritorialization is also a process of cultural diffusion. You don't necessarily see a willing assimilation into that precise example of modern culture. In other words, that example of modern culture might have good bones, as they say about houses, but instead of simply using the existing walls, you tear down the walls, use the bones, and rebuild it for your local flavor. Make it part of your local heritage in your particular place. So there are many examples of this around the world that I mentioned, in your textbook. It talks about music festivals, and so one of the reasons why I wanted you to look at that is because music was going to be my example here with reterritorialization. So please be careful in your Google searches for this particular word. Please be careful in your Google searches for the globalization word. I'm having some tongue twisters today because remember, we look at these things in a particular cultural geography lens, not necessarily a business market lens, not necessarily a political science or colonialism lens. So make sure that you use our textbook as a reference, these videos as a reference, and anything else that advertises itself as a human geography example of these words would be fine too. Text me with questions.